Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We are the House Hunting and Hacking Group, where we're unlocking the power of real estate together. We meet on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Our group includes John Nichols, who is our realtor expertise advisor. We've got Genevieve Henderson, who is our loan advisor, and then myself, Amber Zamudio, and I am an insurance specialist. We're really excited to have you with us this evening and look forward to hearing Kelly speak about mastering midterm rentals remotely. She's got a lot of great information for us, and we're really excited to have her with us today. So thank you, Kelly, so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right. So, do you want to introduce Kelly for us?
Yes, Kelly is my wife. Been married many, many years. And 12 years ago, we decided to embark on something very different. We owned our home in Lyons since 1995. But in 2012, we decided to move to Longmont, Colorado. And we had met some people that were doing rental properties, but really didn't know that much about it. And we took the plunge after doing a little research and made our primary residence in Lyons our first rental property. And then we bought our home in Longmont, where we live now. And slowly but surely, since 2012, we have strategically used equity in our home, in many cases using Genevieve to help us with that, in order to purchase more rental properties. And the last couple of years, we have been investing in Florida, and we are doing midterm rentals. We found some condos in Florida that allow 30-day minimum leases. And also the onboarding of the tenants is very user-friendly. So we've been able to use that to fully furnish 3 different condos, and we do midterm rentals. And so we manage them remotely. And my wife, Kelly, is the one that handles most of that. So we thought she would be a great guest speaker for tonight. So we're going to turn it over to Genevieve, the moderator, and our guest, Kelly Nichols.
Yay. So we've prepared some questions to make sure that we cover all the information and that we can get out of Kelly. So I'm going to get started with our first set. Who is generally a midterm renter?
Well, a midterm is, a lot of people ask me that when I throw out the term, and midterm means a little longer than short term and a little shorter than long term. So generally it's somebody who's looking to stay a month to 6 months or even a little bit longer. Sometimes we get 8 or 9 months renters, but not a full year lease and not just a 1-week vacation. So typically people who do this are people who can work remotely and want to spend a little bit longer time in an area that they're visiting. Retirees who are, seasonal, they come, snowbirds are very, very common midterm renters. And then, people who are like traveling nurses, another very common field, or we've had other medical professionals as well. And just various professionals who have to travel for their job and maybe be in the location for longer than just a week travel term. So.
And by the way, if anybody has any questions, feel free to interject. You can use the chat box if you like, or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and just ask.
Yeah, maybe a quick question. So when we talk and when we say midterm rentals, are we specifically like thinking about like Airbnb, or this is something different?
Well, we use Airbnb as one of the platforms where we advertise our midterm rentals. So yes, you can definitely do it through Airbnb. There are lots of other sites where you can advertise, so it doesn't have to be through Airbnb. I think most people know that Airbnb takes a pretty good percentage of the fee, as do, if you hire management companies, they're going to take a pretty good chunk too. So, so it doesn't have to be through Airbnb.
Cool. Thank you.
And I think I want to add that sometimes people just assume when people say Airbnb that, you're always going to have scrutiny when it comes to regulators if you simply put your property on Airbnb on that platform. But really the scrutiny comes when you do Airbnb and you do it under 30 days. That's where you usually have to have a license, and that's where you're getting into short term. But the beauty of the 30-day or more is it now becomes a midterm. And because it's 30 days or more, most municipalities look at that as a month-to-month lease. So you just don't find the same kind of scrutiny as long as you're doing 30 days or more. And so many different investor groups like Bigger Pockets, they kind of coined this whole idea as midterm rental.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one of the many pros to doing midterm rental versus short-term rental, is less scrutiny. And also when you're having less turnover, you have fewer hassles with, cleaning in between and different maintenance issues, and, having somebody, all the things associated with having somebody check out, and all the things associated with introducing a new person checking in. And also with, with the short-term rentals, with the 1 week or less, a lot of times you get people who are coming for a vacation and a party, and they're not going to be the same kind of renter that you have in a midterm, where, somebody who's coming to work remotely for a month or more, or traveling medical professional or whatever, they're going to treat your place a lot differently than someone who's coming for a week on vacation. So.
And then Alvaro asked the question, which platform do you recommend for midterm rentals, Ms. Nichols?
Well, there are a lot of platforms out there, and I can't really speak to, all of them. We've been using Furnished Finder as one of our platforms, and then we also have a website where we will, post a website on Facebook and then boost a Facebook ad. So those are a few of the things that we've done. There's a lot out there that we haven't tried, and a lot of that's because of other things that we've done. We haven't really had to work super hard at finding exactly the right platform. It's, our places have stayed pretty well booked and rented with what we're doing. But there's certainly more that we could learn on that front. So.
Great question.
And I don't want to take the whole meeting here, but what I'm interested in, how do you guys target real estate for this specific type of renting? So do you have like almost like a template where you say, all right, I want to focus on, 2-bedroom houses or multi-unit properties, or, what is your kind of mindset from that perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's so many facets to that. So you mean, and I'm assuming you mean, how do we target a place where we want to buy? How do we figure out where and what we want to purchase?
Correct. Yep.
Is that correct? Okay. So, if you want to cater to families, obviously you want something a little larger. If in our case, we mostly have traveling professionals that's usually just either a single person or a couple, or occasionally they have 1 or 2 children traveling with them. So ours are 2-bedroom, 2-bath condominiums, which, has been a good fit for us. Since they appeal to a pretty broad section of people who tend to travel, this has worked out well for us. I also see in our niche, I see the 1-bedrooms doing very well also. A lot of times a traveling professional only needs a 1-bedroom because they're traveling on their own. Another thing to really look for is a place that is a destination. Colorado is a destination. Florida is a destination. Ours are in Florida. We also wanted to choose a place that is appealing for us to go to, because, we're going to have times when we have to go down there and work on the properties. We had times when we were down there searching for the properties. So you obviously want a place where people want to be. So, somewhere in the middle of Ohio, probably not so much. So that was all part of it for us deciding.
And we kind of stumbled upon this a few years ago. It's a long story. We were supposed to be in Mexico, but at the last minute we were in Florida. And then we thought, maybe we should be looking in Florida. And, we kind of just had a blank slate, Hasim, and we were looking at Fort Lauderdale for a while. Didn't really get a good vibe. And then we went a couple months later to the Tampa area. and really liked it, hired a realtor. And then, a lot of it comes down to the price point, what we qualified for. So we connected with Genevieve, kind of figured out, okay, based on our real estate portfolio, what can we realistically do? And so we were kind of trying to stay, somewhere in the 250 to 300,000 range. We looked at a few single family homes, but then, the devil's in the details with a lot of these places. The insurance cost in Florida is a lot higher. And then we were thinking, well, who's going to mow the lawn, and then we found out all about, the regular maintenance of termite prevention. So we kind of settled on the condo. And then since we have condos here in Colorado that are easier for me to self-manage, I manage most of the Colorado properties. It just made sense. Even though you pay the HOA does provide things like the pool and things that we and our guests enjoy. But then that just makes it much easier, because all we're really responsible for is managing the inside unit. So that's how we settled on the 2-bedroom, 2-bath in the Tampa area, was based on what we qualified for, and then really started to think about what is practical to own and invest while we're in Colorado.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and another really, really important thing to look at when you're looking over listings and you're researching places, you want to check on any kind of, whether it be a neighborhood or a condo complex or anything, keep your eye on those HOA rules, because you don't want to get into something that you find out you can't then rent. It's very, very common in Florida to see a great deal and find out, well, you have to be 55 and over to live there or rent anybody, or you have to own it for a year before you can rent it out. Or there's a 6-month minimum on rentals, so you can only do a lease that's for 6 months at a time. So we had to do a lot of searching to find what we have that has a 1-month minimum rental, which we're great with. That's right in the midterm space. So,
and then we also had to make sure that it was easy to onboard the tenants, because there were a few places that had 30-day minimum leases, but then you found out that you had to take the lease and put it in front of the board, and the board had to approve it. Kelly is now fielding requests for 2025, and we've got to make a commitment to them. And we certainly can't say, well, why don't we write up the lease and then let me get it to the HOA and we'll see what happens, right? That can't happen. And so, and then in addition to what Kelly was saying, when you're doing your research, what was really frustrating is between our realtor doing her MLS search and like when we would do realtor.com, we would see listings that said 30-day minimum lease. And then me being a realtor, I would call and do some of the work that my realtor couldn't do because she was busy. And the realtor completely botched it up. And the reality is it wasn't 1 month minimum lease. So again, like she's saying, there's just a lot of like double checking, triple checking to make sure.
You have to diligently do your research on the front end. So,
and I would assume for some properties, HOAs don't allow rentals at all, right?
That's correct.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
But what we're finding in Florida is many of them, they will, but you literally have to live there for a year. And that's just not where that just wasn't working for us. So we ended up buying 3 in the exact same complex in Seminole, Florida, which is just north of St. Petersburg, not too far from the airport. And we're okay with that. It would have been nice to spread that out into a couple of different areas, but when it came right down to it, it was kind of a unicorn to be able to find a place that had the 2 major components, 30-day minimum lease and what I refer to as ease of tenant onboarding.
Okay.
John and Kelly, are there clauses within your HOA contracts that kind of grandfather you in if they change the HOA rules to where they will then no longer allow for short-term rentals? Or how does something like that work?
That's absolutely correct. So there are people in the complex who were grandfathered into the short-term Airbnbs. So there are several units in that condo complex where people are allowed to rent for a weekend or a week at a time. We're not. We were not on that grandfather clause. So, but yeah, I mean, there's no guarantees in life, but that's the way it worked for the people previously. So, we felt pretty confident that if they changed that we would be grandfathered in, and we were given that assurance by the management, but the management has changed hands since then. So I guess you never know for sure. So.
Oh, good question. You kind of already elaborated, started a little bit on this because are there pros and cons of midterm versus long or short-term rentals?
Yeah, there are some downsides. Like it is more work to manage a midterm rental than it is a long-term rental. You have more turnover. You have to make sure that it's furnished. And certain supplies are there. Like you don't want people showing up and there's not toilet paper or a few of the essential items, dish soap that you want to have in there when people arrive. Um, uh, yeah, and then some of the benefits of midterm over short term I already mentioned, and another one of those is a lot of the people in the complex, they're not happy about the short term renters in there and people coming in and being noisy for a week or disruptive or potentially even doing damage and not caring about the property or the grounds in general because they're just there for a week on vacation and probably never going to be there again. And so you make your neighbors unhappy with you in that situation too. So we try to be really careful, to do some screening that we can and get to know the people coming in a little bit. And you have that opportunity a little bit more with the midterm. Like we do a background check, some of those types of things. So.
And one other thing is you do pay utilities for short and midterm rentals because the idea is that they can walk in and it's like a hotel. Whereas a short-term rental, we're charging less, we're renting it longer. So we don't have to worry about turnover, like Kelly said, but we also don't have to worry about, on a long term, we don't have to worry about utilities. That's something that the tenant pays for.
Very good.
Yeah, and another nice perk for us in the midterm rental space is if you have someone that say they book for 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and then there's a nice little opening where you can go down and enjoy the space before the next month begins and another renter comes in. So you might have a 10-day opening where you can go and spend time down there and maybe you do a little work on it too. And then you have basically a vacation that's a write-off. So, and you don't have to pay for lodging. So that's one of the things that we enjoy about it. So,
and we've also been in a little better position now to give back. Like the woman that we know that's our cleaner out here, that she's a single mom. It was really cool because we were able to say, hey, there's a week opening, and so we can give it away. We just can't rent it for less than 30 days, but we can let friends and family stay there. Don't get any ideas, Amber and Genevieve. No, you guys can go anytime. Anytime you want to go to Florida, even though Genevieve, I know you like just to be in the polar mountains, so you may not like it there. But yeah, that's a nice thing, summer. Just being able to do that, because when we were younger, people did that for us, and it felt good.
Very nice. What are some cost-effective ways to furnish, decorate, and stock these properties?
So I think that goes a little bit to our background because I don't know how much in these past episodes John has talked about our background, but we raised 5 kids on a teacher's salary and whatever extra I could bring in doing some side jobs here and there. So we learned to be very frugal for many years. So we just applied the same thing. And you need the place to look nice. You need to have good photographs. So you need some, nice furnishings, some nice decorations, but it doesn't have to be, the Ritz Hotel. And, people have I've actually had renters tell me that they appreciate that it's not over decorated. There's not so many, nice things, especially if they have, say, their 10-year-old staying with them, or they have to worry about things getting broken because there's so many fragile decorative items around or things like that. So, we find that place in the middle, things that look nice. And there are all kinds of, consignment stores and secondhand furniture stores and looking on Facebook Marketplace where you can find a lot of very nice things, just paying a fraction of what they would cost new. Obviously, there's some things you have to buy new, like linens and certain items that need to be new when they're in there, but for furniture and lots of wonderful art and things on the walls that we found in consignment stores. So
yeah, so the first one we bought was pretty much ready to go turnkey. The second one was half and half. And then the one we bought last year, we went down over spring break with our son, rented a Turo truck, and it was just a lot of go pick this up on Facebook Marketplace, go to this place. Kelly ordered a lot of stuff on Amazon to be delivered, like the blender and the toaster and things that we wanted to look new. But yeah, we did not spend a lot. And I've heard people talk about furnishing midterm rentals. And certainly if you want to have a company come in and make it all brand new, then you're talking about, $30,000 to do it. I've heard, depending on the size of it, but there is definitely ways to do nice stuff and not break the bank.
Yeah. And there are, condos and places out there that people are selling that they've already been Airbnb-ing, and maybe they're ready to, retire from that or travel or, do their own thing, and they're selling it ready to go. So you can find those out there too. And as John said, that was the case with our very first one. That was a case of people trapped in Canada during COVID, and they just decided, since they couldn't leave and come down and use it or do anything, they were just going to sell it. And they had been Airbnb-ing it, and it was, pretty much ready to go. We just, changed a few small things and off and running. So.
What process did you purchase a rental out of state? Was there any other steps?
So go ahead.
So I think the question was what brought us to the point of purchasing out of state, right? Your audio kind of came out a second.
The question was, what process did you use to purchase a rental out of state?
So, well, a little bit like we mentioned, like we had traveled to the place to check it out. We did our research in terms of selecting a place. We visited a few places, and I think, if I remember right, what made us decide to visit the side of Florida where we are was, I did a fair amount of hurricane history research. So obviously Florida gets hit by hurricanes, and I looked back, as long as recorded history goes back, into the different places that hurricanes had hit and their path and the amount of damage done. And so we found an area that really rarely gets hit by hurricanes historically. And there's some weather pattern reasons for that and the typical paths that hurricanes typically follow. So that was part of our decision. So you definitely want to do your research in an area on things like that. And we're really glad we did, just because of what's happening with insurance costs, which we couldn't foresee when we started on this path years back. So I don't know, maybe some people could have, but so that was one of the things is, doing your research. It doesn't, in this day and age, you don't always have to be on site. There's so much you can find online on the internet, just to learn about the space where you're potentially buying. So that's one big thing. And then, having a realtor that we trusted, that was hardworking, you definitely want that. You can look at listings from anywhere. And then, when we were honing in on something interesting, you always want to have your inspection done, even if whether you live there or not. And a lot of times John would fly in around that time, to wherever we were having an inspection done. And there were some properties that we looked at and even had inspected that we did not end up purchasing. So.
Yeah. And the Tampa area kind of came about because, we took our daughter spring break of 2021, I believe, to see Winter the Dolphin. So we did kind of a spring break trip, but then use it as a business trip because we knew we were going out there. Started to work with a realtor. She started showing us places. And then to continue on the process, we didn't find anything yet, but then she did a great job after we identified properties of doing virtual showings. And as a realtor, I do the same thing. I have buyers from all over the country wanting to buy in Colorado. And it's really kind of cool to just have a WhatsApp and, just be able to walk around the place. So I can send them everything as far as MLS stuff. And then in the comfort of their own home, they can sit as I walk through it. And then the exact same thing was happening to us, which was kind of fun for me to be sitting back as a buyer, having Tammy Danielson, our realtor, out there do that. And then Hasim, you had mentioned, is it easier to manage Colorado or Florida? I think it really just kind of depends. I have to say Colorado might be a little easier just because if I need to go to the place, I can drive there. But, you know, flights are pretty cheap to Florida. So if we really have to like drop everything, one of us could probably make it. And what we're finding now is as we've established a beachhead, so to speak, you know, there's 191 units in that complex called the Beachway Condo Complex in Seminole, Florida. So we already have our handyman lives in one of the units, and our cleaner, you know, lives right next door to one of the units. She recently got another job, but we have a good relationship with her. We got, you know, took her family out for the 4th of July last year, you know, to thanks for all the things that she's done. So there are definitely ways, especially if it's a destination place, as Kelly said, that you're going to go down there anyway, and you're going to meet people. And so you're going to be able to find that it's a lot easier. And then because you're only managing the inside, you know, in a lot of cases, let's say that we have a 30-day renter and the microwave breaks. Well, it would be the same as if the microwave broke here in Colorado. I would be calling up our handyman, which we have in Colorado and here, and basically, you know, with the permission of the tenant, saying the tenant has said there's an issue. Do you guys mind communicating? Because obviously, Mr. or Mrs. Handyman, you got to get in there when the tenant's there. And then everything's taken care of. And then the handyman just sends me the bill. So in that sense, Hasim, it really doesn't matter that much what state it's in. I think it's a lot easier to manage these than I thought. But it was a little bit of a learning curve for sure. And then Alvaro, you mentioned any platform connecting with a good realtor out of state. I think it comes down to like, in my case, like there's been times I've had buyers in Colorado and then they wanted to buy in Seattle. So I would just do my own research as a realtor to connect them to somebody. I'm with the EXP brokerage. So if I'm working with somebody and they say, John, I'd like to find something in Columbus, Ohio, for instance, I would do a little research in my firm to kind of figure out, you know, who's a good realtor, and then I would make that connection. So you could just do your own research, Alvaro, by like doing Google searches. But certainly if you have a relationship with a realtor and then you want that realtor to make a connection, you can do it that way as well.
And I'm sure my husband, John, would do that for you if you'd like.
I can testify the realtor that John vetted for our clients that closed in Seattle, that realtor team was phenomenal. We beat out all the competition with that offer. They were incredibly professional. So I know when John says he researches and vets realtors, he like overkills it. It's that good. It's highly recommends. If you're looking elsewhere, I just have John do the research for you.
Well, you know, one of the things I'm going to do is as I start researching people, I'm going to find out how fast they respond to me, because I think that's a great sign. We chose realtors, a particular realtor in 2012 when we decided to move to Longmont. It was New Year's Day and I was already researching realtors, and this one woman was like, I like her. And kind of the same thing happened with our one in Florida. We actually had one that wasn't the one we ended up with. And I think she video showed, but there was just something that I couldn't remember what it was, but there was something that made us think, I don't really know if I want to work with this person, because we weren't sure like how reliable they were going to be. I think it came down to like, we were asking her, please send us a lot of listings. We're really interested. And then we're like, why are we not getting any listings? And then I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I think I had done one of those, like respond to a Zillow ad for one in Florida, and Tammy, the one we ended up with, responded right away. And then she was great. Like if we said, hey, can you do a video showing, you know, within reason. I mean, realtors can't just drop everything at a moment's notice, but like within a day, she worked it out and she was there. And so either she met us personally or met us online and did everything possible to make sure we could see as many properties as possible.
Wow. Our next question is, how is it even possible to manage these from afar? And if you're not there, what do you do when an item needs fixing, the place needs cleaning, or those expectations, like the cable guy needs to be let in and nobody's home? So you'll talk on that a little bit. Were there any other additional
So some of the things that that I've found to be helpful. One of the things that I am really glad to have is a Wi-Fi electronic lock on each of our units. I can set codes from Colorado. I can lock and unlock it from Colorado. And I can, if I need to, I can see what's happening down there, who's come in and out. Fortunately, that hasn't been an issue, but so, there are times like I have code for repair people, and, sometimes, something's broken and the residents aren't going to be home. They say, hey, are you comfortable with our person going in there and working on the dishwasher when you're not home? And if they are, they go in with their code. So, that's definitely been really helpful. And then, finding, you might think, oh, we're letting this repair person in when somebody's not home. Just finding people that you feel comfortable with and that you can trust. Since John and I have spent some time in the area, we've done some activities with meetup groups. And, I have a group of people I play volleyball with down there whenever I go down. And, those people, some of them flip houses, some of them are realtors, some of them manage their own properties. And so we can share contacts of, they're happy to give me their HVAC person that they really like, or, so things like that can be really helpful if you have time to spend a little time there and get to know the area and find people that you really feel good about, having, like our cleaner and our repair person have been just invaluable, just in different things. We had a situation last year where one of our electronic door locks jammed. It turned out to be faulty, and it jammed from the inside. So we had people that couldn't open the door from the inside. So they and their basset hound were going out the window, and yeah, fortunately they were really good sports about it. And they, so our repair guy, was there, and he just, showed up, and he was able to take the lock off and put on a temporary replacement for a little while that was just, a deadbolt. So, and then he made key copies for himself and our cleaner, and who's also a backup person for us in an emergency. And just, so we so appreciate having people like that. And we try to make sure they know how valued they are. Sometimes when I'm paying them for a job, I'll throw in an extra $20 and say, hey, thanks for being there for us. Or, make sure I, give them a little something for Christmas, and just treat them, like the gold they are to our business, So.
And every little, when we when we were down there for the 4th of July, we were obviously maintaining the place. And then we took the cleaner and her husband, their kids out to dinner. And then we did something with their church group for 4th of July. Well, that's a business expense at that point. So obviously we're writing that off. We were going to take them out to dinner anyway, but it's kind of a nice bonus because we're down there doing things with our rental properties, showing appreciation for all the people, like Kelly said, that are, they're the boots on the ground, and you've got to have that. You've got to have that supply line boots on the ground, or it won't work.
Franklin put in a question that's actually really similar to what I was going to ask too. He's asking about any software that you use other than Airbnb and Furnished Finder platforms. And then my question too is, beyond that, is there like other ways or places that you advertise? There's the platforms that have the booking, but are there other places that you also just advertise?
Yeah, not really. We haven't had to go too far into that. They've been, pretty well rented with the few things that we're doing. So, obviously in Florida, everybody wants to be there in the winter, and they're a little less sought after in the summer. So, the price is lower in the summer. So you have to, be aware of those kind of seasonal things. And, occasionally we'll have a place that it's a week out and there's a month that's not rented or whatever. And so that's when I'll really kind of hit, like I'll run a promotion on Airbnb, or I'll put a post on Facebook and boost it and maybe target certain areas where we've had people in the past. Or sometimes I'll reach out to past guests who had a great time, and say, hey, we've got an opening. And I did, I had one booking that way last fall where, people said, yeah, we would like to go back again this fall. So, just some of those things have been all that we've needed to do. I know there's a lot more out there in terms of marketing and things like this, but we just haven't needed it so far. So.
When you go through,
Yeah.
sorry, quick question. When you go through the platforms like Facebook and do the advertising on things like that, are you then redirecting them to like one of your other platforms, like the short-term rental platform, Airbnb or the Furnished Finder, in order to have the contract? Or how do you then work out a contract?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So that is one, even though people are going to pay extra with the fees on Airbnb, that is one nice thing. It's all taken care of. People have to pay up front. We don't have to worry about the money exchange and those sorts of things. If people reach out to us through, say, our website or a Facebook post or through Furnished Finder, we have a legal Florida lease that we use and email to them for all parties to sign. And so, then it's a little bit more work on our end with that regard. And then we make sure there's a background check, another $45. So yeah, there's a little more work to that. Whereas, some people just like to use Airbnb, then they don't have to worry about any of that.
So in that case, you give them the option. They can either, re-navigate to Airbnb or you.
Correct.
Oh,
correct. So when I boost a Facebook post, I have the Airbnb link on there. I have the Furnished Finder link on there, and I have a link to our own website as well. And then they can, research it from all angles and decide which way they want to go. So
the best way to think of it is with Airbnb, there's the good news is there's the trusted third party. There's no money exchanged. They've kind of done their vetting. You have the Airbnb ratings on both sides, but at the end of the day, we net less and the buyer pays more, the renter pays more. With Furnished Finder, we can net more and the buyer pays less because there's almost no fee, but we have to do a lot more work. And so we are doing the background check, but we make the tenant do that towards the end, just like I would for the long-term tenant. And in the meantime, we have to do some sort of due diligence, and it could be a lot of different ways of doing that. But one in particular, one of our first guests ever in our first Beachway condo was a retiree. So I reached out to his realtor because he told me, yeah, we just sold in Pennsylvania. We're looking for a house down here, and we just want a place to stay until we find the right one. And in that case, I figured, well, the best thing to do is call a realtor, if nothing else, just to verify that these people are in fact in that situation. The realtor was like, these are great people, et cetera. And so I thought, okay, that's probably good enough. But there's been times when we've needed to do a little more research. So there is more work to do it with Furnished Finder, but it's a nice pivot if somebody's kind of thinking they want our rental, but they're not sure about the price. And Kelly I don't know how she does it because she can't really say on Airbnb, go to Furnished Finder, but there's ways to kind of like get people to figure it out.
Well, yeah, there's some people that already know, and they will spell out their phone number on an Airbnb message and say, please text me, which, Airbnb is not usually too happy about that, but so I try to stay in the good graces and not initiate something like that. But yeah, some people, they know we're going to get a better deal, and it's going to be better for everybody if we go the other route. So, I would say we're pretty close to half and half. Where about half the people book through Airbnb and about half of our renters are, through a lease. So
I would think if you're getting a repeat person and you already had a good experience with them before, they would definitely be one that you want to help them save money.
Yeah.
Right. And in that case, you already have each other's contact information. See, that's the thing when they're communicating with you through the Airbnb platform and they have not yet booked, you don't have any access to their contact information. And if they try to send you a phone number or an email, it gets blocked. So Airbnb hasn't figured out a way to stop it if they spell their phone number. So that's the only way.
But with AI, that'll probably change pretty soon.
Yeah.
The nice thing too about having that database is once in a while when things are a little slow, we can start digging back in, like where are the old emails or where are the old leases? Who can we contact? And then I have the advantage with my realtor software where once we've decided on the lease, I can just take the lease in a PDF and then I can tweak it a little bit and then shoot it over to them to DocuSign. So for all of you who are thinking of that, Franklin, that question, I'm sure there's different ways to do it, but you would definitely want that because obviously it's going to be difficult to have a hand signature.
Yeah, definitely. Do you take security deposits or anything like that with these
We
longer
do.
leases?
If they're not through Airbnb, if they're booking through Airbnb, they've already paid in full in order to make the booking. But if we're doing a lease, then yes, we use a security deposit.
And there's a really good question. And so basically kind of like when a 1-year tenant leaves, I've got to walk through there and then decide how much their security deposit gets back. Well, obviously that's difficult for us because we're not there. So that's where that relationship with the cleaner comes in to give us an idea. Was there an excessive amount of dog hair? Was there something that you don't remember the last time you were in there? We really haven't had to deal with much, again, because the crowd we're catering to is more of your professionals. There's been a few that haven't been great, but in both cases, whether it's Airbnb or Furnished Finder, we also have like a cleaning fee. And if they do have a pet, there is some pet fee as well.
Nice.
Do you have tricks of the trade as far as getting noticed above your competition on these rental platforms?
Yeah, the biggest trick of the trade is pick a place where everyone wants to be. So yeah, and then have some, pretty fabulous photographs of, gorgeous sunsets and beaches and the swimming pool and some of the area attractions. So, and we could definitely improve on that. There's definitely some photographs of things that we could add to our website. But, like you said, we've been getting pretty good notice, so we haven't had to scour all that's out there. So, definitely room to learn more on that front. So.
And Kelly's really good about responding to, well, like when we have tenants, she does a good job of rating them and then they give us ratings. And
so yeah, that's true. Having good ratings. We're super hosts on Airbnb and have been for a long time. So that, that definitely helps. We get, top listed a little bit on the Airbnb sites. So, that definitely helps, just making sure to really take care of your guests and, and trying to have, part of what I enjoy about managing is just trying to have a good relationship with them. So our guest that's in one of our condos right now, I had dinner with her a couple weeks ago when I was down there, and we had a great time together. So she's just an older single woman. And so, just trying to have that relationship, have a little bit of fun with the people and, help them relax, enjoy their time there. I think, that can be a good one too. And it gives you end up with a better rating and they, recommendations to their friends and so on. So.
Write that meal off. How awesome is that?
Right.
And that really is. And that really is such good advice, Kelly, because there are so many times that personal relationships with anything go so much further than just, reading a review or something like that. To have that personal relationship in business, and this is a business,
it is a
so
business.
valuable to every aspect involved.
Your tenants are your business. There's no question about it. You treat them well. We like to manage our own properties. During COVID, I was reaching out to every tenant. I already knew on my end what are some options I have if I need to extend the loan or whatever, but I was reaching out to them and they appreciated it. And there were times when, we needed to try to work through things and I needed to listen. Maybe we split up the rental payment and they really appreciated that. And then, as we were getting into COVID, we heard all the stories of, tenants are getting a lot of rights. And then there was a lot of landlords that weren't paying attention. We're not building the relationship. And then all of a sudden it's like, pay me rent. And they're digging their heels in and saying, I have rights. What are you going to do about it? So I think you can avoid so much by responding quickly when something goes wrong, even if it's remotely, because we have the people out there to do it. And then, just having that relationship. Absolutely.
Hasim had a question in the chat box. Do you add all your properties under an LLC or INC?
We were just talking about that. I was meeting with an attorney the other day. We need to get an LLC for our Florida properties. We do not have that. We do have good coverage. At one time, before we had 9 properties, we did have an umbrella over everything. But yeah, that's the tricky thing now. There was a time where I was able to have all the properties under one company, and then I could do an umbrella. But a lot of insurance carriers will not do an umbrella unless you have it all under one carrier. Amber, you can speak to that. Maybe there's been some changes, because I would personally love to have one umbrella over everything, but it doesn't appear to be that easy. And she can explain what an umbrella policy is for those of you who are not clear.
Yeah, an umbrella policy is a type of insurance policy that overlays your personal properties, your auto policies, and then any rental properties that you have. When you have a certain number of policies, many carriers will actually require you to have a commercial policy. When you have your properties listed under an LLC or an incorporation, in a lot of those cases, you have to carry a commercial policy. And a lot of times it's in your best benefit to do that. You can get oftentimes bundled rates by putting everything under one primary policy that houses several different properties. So it just kind of depends on what your insurance carrier is doing. And that's one benefit to working with a broker, is that they can go through the different options and things of that nature. For instance, with Travelers, you can only have 7 rental properties. With other carriers, you can have up to 19. So it'll really just depend on that. But again, if you're doing an LLC incorporating or anything like that, oftentimes you would want to have a commercial policy. The other thing to think about when you're doing that is, if you are an LLC where it's just your spousal units, oftentimes that's acceptable in a landlord policy through a standard personal carrier. So it'll depend on how your LLC is set up. If you have like your property manager or something in on it, or you're doing it with a friend, in those cases, you would have to have a special kind of insurance.
And
But I will add on what you guys are doing. It's a great model, because especially with insurance right now, it's crazy. You know, I hate saying that, because that's, I'm the insurance specialist, but let's just be real. We're all paying a lot more for insurance. In a condo situation, you're only paying insurance for the interior of the structure. So oftentimes it's around $100 per square foot, depending on your location. And it really is a benefit to that, because you're not having to have insurance on the roof, on the structure itself, all of those things. So there is a big benefit to doing it the condo way. You save a lot.
Alvaro, do you recommend to rent single family home by, oh, I see what you're saying. So that would be what we refer to house hacking. And now, for all of you on the call, if you haven't heard, I encourage you to Google Bigger Pockets. And it's a website. I am a podcast junkie, and it's all things real estate. And they've got tons of stuff on there about fix and flips, rent and hold. And the other thing, Alvaro, I don't know if you've heard the term, but it's called house hacking. And we actually do that in our home in Longmont, because it's basically taking part of your home and renting it out to get income on your primary residence. So we do it by doing Airbnb. So we are doing some short-term rental in our primary residence. We have an Airbnb license, and we do it out of our downstairs bedrooms. So to answer your question, Alvaro, a lot of people are maximizing their rental income by house hacking, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. One of my sons recommended I work with one of his friends, and I found him a 5-bedroom home in Arvada, and he's living there now, single guy, and he's renting out the other 4 rooms. So if you can do it, if you're single, or if you're married and your spouse doesn't mind having other people in your house, I mean, there has to be some sort of peace about that. A lot of young people are buying homes and house hacking, at least for the first few years, because it is expensive. Insurance is expensive. Mortgages are expensive. But if you do it right, if you get a nice area with the right amount of bedrooms, you can get $800-900 a bedroom, and you can more than pay for your mortgage. So I would say, depending on your life situation, it might be something to consider. And I'd be happy to talk to you more about how to house hack.
And I'm actually going to go back to that question on the LLC. From a lending standpoint, that can be true with lenders. I had to research that. I think it was, we were doing 1031 exchange, I think, on a property, and I had to see, because Fannie on the conventional side, which is typically a mortgage, type loan that we would use as a conventional loan for an investor. Fannie Mae had done away with the ability to lend, allow title and everything with an LLC. And so I had to do some research, and I found that I could do it through the Freddie Mac program on the secondary market. So it can be done conventionally, but not all lenders know that or understand how to do it. So if that's something you want to do, call me. And then also the issue with condos is a problem too for investors, because of the occupancy ratio in the condo complex. It generally lends itself to being non-warrantable for investors to be able to buy in condos. And I have a loophole that I've also found for that as well, that I've used over a dozen times. So if a condo is what you want as an investor, give me a call.
And just to clarify, yes, Genevieve is awesome at that. And to clarify, non-warrantable kind of sounds scary, but at the end of the day, it means there are more people like us as investors that own than there are primary residents. So lenders are a little more reluctant to want to lend because traditionally primary residents have more pride of ownership. But there are ways around that. And usually you can get a better deal on a non-warrantable condo. It can give you better cash flow. Because when you're getting into condo complexes where it's mostly primary residents, it can be pretty expensive. Genevieve also mentioned something called a 1031 exchange. That is a very exciting thing to keep in mind. If you ever have an investment property and you have a lot of equity and you don't want to sell it outright, because by selling it, you would have to pay capital gains tax on the capital gains, there is a way to sell one investment property, do a 1031 exchange into a similar property. And if you do it all right, there's some rules. I can connect you to people that do that. You can avoid capital gains. You can take all of your gains without taxes and put it into another property.
I just had one thing to add about the house hacking portion. It is important to talk to your insurance carrier when you're doing that, because several carriers do have limitations on the number of tenants that can be involved. When it goes over a certain amount, then it becomes a boarding house, and it does need to be insured in a different manner.
And to piggyback on that, most municipalities will have limits, Alvaro. So for instance, the place in Arvada, we were okay because we found out that other than the owner, you are allowed to have up to 4 unrelated people. But then you go to Denver or other municipalities and it might be 2 or 3 unrelated people. So it's very important. Now that you could buy it and have more than that, and most likely you wouldn't have a problem. Although I would never do it because I would feel nervous, because it only takes one neighbor to, maybe someone was parking in the wrong spot and then they call the whatever code enforcement, and then they look around, it's like, oh, you have too many people. And then what are you going to do? Because your whole business model was based on that. So one of the reasons why people like Arvada is because of that rule. And also Arvada is very Airbnb friendly.
And since we're getting to the bottom of the hour, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you guys can all see that. And I'll let Amber take away our closing here.
Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. I think it was a lot of great information, and Kelly, we're really appreciative that you were able to join us today. John, you chimed in with such good information as well. It can be very scary when you're thinking about things, especially across the country and where you may not, already have established connections and things. So thank you for bringing it to reality that it is possible, that it wouldn't be something that's gonna bankrupt you, for instance. So thank you so much for that. Our closing announcements are that our next meeting, which will be Tuesday, the 13th of February at 7 p.m., is going to be an open forum, and it'll be on the 2024 market predictions for insurance, real estate, what's going on with the lending aspect and all of that. We do use a new Zoom link in every meeting, and you can find that on the Meetup page. If you are not following our page on Meetup, please do that. And please also follow us on Facebook with our Facebook group. And we also will be putting our information on the YouTube channel, House Hunting and Hacking. Feel free to rewatch the previous episodes we've done. There's been a lot of really great information exchanged. And we look forward to seeing you guys all next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Kelly, thank you. It was nice
Thank
to
you.
meet
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Take care.